This is Catherine Schneider from the Fitchburg Historical Society, and we are continuing our series of visiting with people from the Fitchburg community, business, education, government, and finding out how COVID has really impacted their what they're doing in Fitchburg and the Fitchburg community. And so this afternoon, we are so pleased to welcome Pam Birschback from First Weber Realty. So I'm just going to ask Pam, first of all, if she could do a little introduction of herself and tell us a little bit about her background in real estate, and then what her professional experience has been like, maybe particularly in Fitchburg.
I'd love to. So I've been in real estate since January of '99, always with First Weber. And our office wasn't always in Fitchburg. We didn't move to our present office, until I believe it was 2003. And otherwise, we were in Whitney Way area and then moved out here. And I started managing our First Weber offices. I managed 4 of them in 2018. And so I sold real estate for 22 years. My now 23-year-old son was 6 months old. And so kind of worked through that career with young children and raised them along with learning about real estate. So it was very good.
Great, great. And then Pam, we've been dealing with COVID now for about a year and a half. This is September of 2021, and really began to really explode in the United States, maybe March of 2020. So in that time frame, could you give us just a sense maybe of the real estate market's movement?
Sure. So I think with COVID, one of the beauties of COVID is we all learned how important our personal spaces are and what we need to feel secure. And so, which was really has to do with housing, whether you're an apartment dweller or you own your own home or you rent a home, whatever it is. But we realized, okay, if I'm going to work from home, is it just me working from home? Is it me and my husband working from home? And if you have children, are they at home? Well, everybody was at home. And if you don't have the spaces in your home to make that work for everybody to be on their computer at the same time and not hear one another, then everybody started realizing, okay, my space isn't working. So how am I going to make my space work? And so what we found is we had a slight slowdown early on when COVID first hit, and we were like, well, what do we do with this? And there was just a slight bump in the road, I would say. But we realized our buyers, our clients were still saying to us, this isn't going to work for me. I got to get a bigger home because we're all at home and I don't see my kids going back to school for a while. Or maybe they don't have good internet, because not every place in Dane County has good internet. And you need good internet to work from home or have a school system at home. So we were consistently busy all the way through. And we probably had about a week where the WRA, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, and most of us as real estate firms were trying to figure out, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do showings? How are we going to do this effectively and safely for all parties? And it took us probably a week, and we figured it out that we all must wear masks. Everybody that's in a home must have a mask on, gloves on, booties, and lights were all left on in the homes. So they were there when we got there for showings. We left them on when we left. Nothing was touched. Only the real estate agents with their gloves on would open up doors or cupboards or anything along those lines. The buyers could not touch anything, and only one party at a time in a house. And so that worked fabulously. Now, there's certainly certain sellers and certain buyers that they just didn't want to go into a house, and they didn't even want to meet their realtor, and they certainly didn't want to meet a stranger. So what would happen is we, the agents, would go into the house and we'd video it and talk with them as we video. And that's how people bought homes. And so it was, which is just crazy to think about, of course, but we've done it before that way if we needed to. And a lot of people that were moving here were moving from out of state. They didn't have to work from home anymore. And so it was cheaper to move from California to Wisconsin. We had a huge surge from California coming here because they could work here and get paid for their job in California and sell their expensive home in California. So we had an awful lot of that going on. And then of course, what happened with apartment dwellers is, did they even feel safe in an apartment? Did they want to be in shared spaces, in common areas? They didn't want to touch the banisters. They didn't want to touch the elevator buttons. So it was a bit fearful for some people. And so I think that it took a little while for people to figure out, okay, if I'm not going to stay in my apartment, then I must find a home. And so we had a little bit more of a surge in July, August, September of 2020, because it was warm enough. We could be outside. We had it all figured out as far as for easy showings and how to handle the showings. And so we had a really strong surge. If you take a look at numbers from 2019 to 2020 for July, August, and September. And even now that we're in 2021 and we're comparing our numbers now from 2021 to 2020, those are hard months to beat because they were so strong. So that's when apartment dwellers said, I'm getting out of here, I'm finding a home. And so we had an awful lot of that. The other thing that we've seen an awful lot of is if it's people that have multiple homes. Maybe they have a home in Madison and they have a home in Tomahawk, and they don't need to show up to their job here in Madison any longer. So sell their house in Madison because we have higher taxes, and live in Tomahawk, and they can work there. So we're still seeing some of that a little bit. And I think we will for a little while, because nobody really knows what's going to happen with their jobs yet. Will we have to show up to work, or will we be able to work from home, or will we have a hybrid? So that's kind of what we're seeing. Yeah, I think I covered that mostly. I'd have to say the question that most of our agents asked our clients, our buyers, is, do you feel safe in your environment? Safety was a really big deal. And does the layout actually work for you? And if it doesn't, where do you want to be? The other thing that came up quite a bit is outdoor spaces, because it was very nice to be able to sit outside and work, or be able to get your kids outside safely without having to go to a park. And so all of those, I think we took into consideration to help our buyers and our sellers figure out, okay, if you don't want to be in this space, where do you want to be and what's important? And to help them figure that out for themselves.
Not only looking at what people were doing, but also what they wanted, what their new life almost was like, checking in with them on that, because that drives how you want to live, which
Right.
is really, I guess my next question was just asking about what apartment renters and homeowners were looking for in terms of their living arrangements. And I know you've touched on that already, Pam. Anything else, like how spaces would be arranged? You mentioned the outdoor spaces, having more space for work and children doing their schooling at home. How does that make a difference in how you arrange for your home to look?
Well, one thing we found is it was always okay for, prior to COVID, to maybe double up on your workspace and your entertainment space. That was always all right, because you didn't actually work there necessarily. So you would just clean up your workspace if you're going to entertain. And but now that wasn't so much the case. They weren't entertaining, but they needed this permanent workspace. And did they want their permanent workspace to be at the dining room table? Because it's just not a smart move to do that, because you never walk away from work. And so it's always a reminder of, oh, I need to get this done. And so it just wasn't a good environment for people to live in. And we all saw a surge in desk selling and different types of furniture being sold to so that you'd have either a small desk, a large a desk, a more permanent workspace, or children having a small desk that they could work in their room, so that way children could still be in their room and sleep in their room, and parents could continue working and they weren't hearing each other speak. And so while they're all on their computers. Um, so that worked okay for a while, but what we found is most parents realized my children are never leaving their bedrooms. And that's just not a good idea. And so for those kids, and so they need to be able to walk out of their bedrooms, and they need to have a family environment that everybody can walk away from work and walk away from school and just be in a neutral space. So that's where we have found we've kind of gone that direction now, that when people are looking at homes, they want this neutral space, but then they also need their workspaces. And that's kind of the perfect spot if they can afford it and make it work. So we're seeing dining rooms not so important anymore. Big kitchens still very important. Um, the the family eating space is very important. The amount of bathrooms is very important. We're seeing an uptick in bathrooms. 2 is always great, 3 is better. Where it used to be, well, 1 is fine. We're only home, between 5 and 9 p.m. and that we're using the bathrooms. And now, people are home all day and everybody's using the bathrooms. And so that's become a big important thing. Garage space, not so much. That's not as important as it used to be. But patios, porches, covered porches, screened in decks, play sets in the backyard, those are all very, very important again. They kind of lost their thrill. 2 years ago, a buyer would come to town and they'd say, I want to be able to walk to shopping stores and the grocery store. I don't want to drive. Well, that's kind of gone away. That's not important anymore. It's a matter of, okay, I don't mind driving. I kind of want to be further out in the country. I want my own space. I don't want my neighbors that close. So we're starting to see a different trend. And also because they didn't have to be in the city, because they didn't have to drive every day to work. What we did run into, we've ran into this for many years, but it's became more obvious in COVID, is you get outside of Fitchburg and even in parts of Fitchburg, we do not have proper internet. And that's not being fixed very quickly. And so you could be right outside of Verona and you don't have proper internet. 2 people can't be on a computer at once. You could be in a $700,000 house, $1 million house, and you don't have proper internet. So it has absolutely nothing to do with what you can afford. It's not a socioeconomic situation. It has everything to do with the fact that we need to improve our internet in the state of Wisconsin, and certainly in Dane County.
It's so interesting, Pam. You really have insight through your work on people's lives, how they lead their daily lives, don't you? I mean, it's really all of these things you have mentioned have to do with our real daily lives. And
Yep. Yeah. Being a realtor is really interesting.
a
Oh, I'm
different,
sorry.
a different state.
I
Mhm,
think I
absolutely.
lost you
Well,
there.
Pam, yes, just for a second. Can you hear me
Yeah.
again? Good.
Yep, I can hear you
Uh,
again.
Great. Well, I wanted to ask you about the scarcity of homes for sale and the high cost. We all know the high cost of housing these days. So, what are the factors involved in this seller's market? And has COVID been responsible for in any way for this current market we're in?
Well, the one thing COVID has been probably responsible for with the current market is that um, we all realized at the same time whether our living spaces were going to work for us or not. That became very apparent pretty much all at the same time. But otherwise, no, I wouldn't say that COVID is responsible for our lack of inventory. Our lack of inventory is due to many years of a lot of things going on. Between 2008 and 2012, we had an overabundance of inventory, mainly due to the fact that because in '08, we a lot of people realized, okay, I've overextended myself due to the way that they were purchasing homes. They had 100% down. In some cases, 110%. They had no money down, and they even got money for closing costs. So they had no skin in the game, and that was a lending problem. And we have since then fixed that lending problem. So that's not an issue any longer. But what took place is somebody buys a home and they have no money down on it, and they're basically paying the mortgage, which could also be considered rent as far as they're concerned, because they could walk away from that house at any given time. And yeah, it's going to be a bump on their credit, but that was it. And so they weren't losing any money there. And so it was easier for a lot of people to actually walk away from their home than it was to need to pay for a mortgage that they couldn't afford, and due to because maybe they lost their jobs, to downsizing in companies and so forth. And so in 2008 and 2012 we had an awful lot of inventory on the market, and so our current builders just stopped building, and because they couldn't sell them anyway, so we had so many houses on the market. And many of our builders in Dane County had been building for many years, and they'd been through more than one downturn in the economy, and they didn't want to do it again. So they just said, I'm done, I'm walking away, I'm done building. And we really didn't fill that pipeline of builders. We still haven't filled that pipeline with builders. And so over between 2012 and now 2021, across the entire United States, this isn't just Wisconsin or Dane County or Fitchburg, it's across the entire country, that we have probably underbuilt 1 million homes a year since 2012. So we do not have enough housing, and we won't have enough housing for a long time when you base it off those numbers. And because we still don't have enough builders, and we also don't have enough product. We also don't have enough lots. So we need more development. We need more builders. We need to get our hands on product, and we need to keep building. And so Dane County has always been an expensive place to live. And probably what we would call affordable housing would be an apartment. And we all know our apartments aren't cheap. You know, you can get a 2-bedroom apartment from anywhere between $1,100 to $2,000 a month. Well, boy, that's not everybody can afford that. And so and we got apartments going up everywhere, but we truly do need more housing. And so it's going to take a while to get there. You know, we will get there eventually. It's not going to be a year or two. It's going to take a while. And so right now, at this moment, this snapshot in time is probably a good time for buyers to be buying, because the interest rates are still low. There's always fewer buyers in the fall than there are in the spring. And so if you want to get out there and get a nice house without paying 10% more than you should, this would be the time to do it. And so, you know, but what we're going through, we're going to continue to go through for a period of time. And so it's not going to fix itself soon.